14 of the 25 people living on Assateague in 1764 can be identified. Their names may have been recorded to testify about the shipwreck of the Kitty. Almost every house was fenced due to the animals that roamed wild, but none had gates. Instead, little ladders called stiles were used to climb over, and apparently the hardware for gate hinges was hard to come by and expensive. An article dating December the 15th, 1984 in the Peninsula Enterprise announced, "Betty is not yet 4 years old and executes on the accordion all of her favorite songs with skill and delicacy. She discovered her marvelous aptitude for music herself when but 2.5 years old. Fondling her father's accordion, she recognized the different notes of Jesus, lover of my soul, and in a very short time learned to play it with ease and accuracy." Roy Jones, who likes to refer to himself as a 1919 model, is the last living person on Chincoteague who grew up in the village.
My dad was born and grew up on Assateague. His dad grew up and lived on Assateague. His dad grew up and lived on Assateague, and that's as far as I can go back. At that time, life on Assateague and life on Chincoteague was very similar. The only thing, Chincoteague had running water and electricity. And on Assateague, we had no electricity, and we got our water. My grandfather Jones had an open well, and the sand in the bottom of that well was just as white, almost as snow. And I don't care how hot it got, the water in that well was always cool.
This map is a replica of one drawn by Roy Jones. He made this map when he was in his 80s, depicting the village as he remembered it in 1925.
That's the most families that had ever lived on Assateague. It was 35 families. But when I was over there, it was just 20. The first house that I ever remember living in was just a one-story, and that same house is on Ridge Road, right close to Mr. Baldy's. That same little house. Most of the social activities were at the schoolhouse. They didn't go by grades like we do. They went by readers. And first reader, second reader, and it went up to the sixth reader, and that was equivalent to an elementary school. When we finished the sixth reader on Assateague, we had to go to Chincoteague. And of course, we had to go across by boat to the east side, and we had to walk to the school. Well, one of the lighthouse keepers was named Mr. Collins, and he had 3 daughters. Mr. Collins had a boat, I guess it was 22 or 23 feet long, just an open boat. Mr. Collins couldn't take us until sunrise. Now, in the dead of the winter, the sun rises later. And he couldn't come out of the lighthouse until sunrise. And then he'd come down to the landing and ferry us across. And when we got to the eastern side, the bus would pass us, but they couldn't pick us up because we didn't live on Chincoteague. Most of the time, my mom would give me a dime and 2 pennies. Now, that sounds like a very small amount for a lunch. And you could get a big orange drink. I don't know whether you've heard tell of a big orange drink or not. But you could get a big orange drink and you could get a ham sandwich for a dime. Just before one Christmas, I was with my mom and we went to Charlie Gall's store and I saw this BB gun hanging from the ceiling by a string. I says, Mom, I'd like to have that. She says, well, maybe you will get it for Christmas. That was all that was said. And Christmas morning, now I don't know how she ever got that from Charlie Gall's on Chincoteague over to Assateague, but she did. And the BB gun and 5 packs of shot came to a total of $1.50.
lived in the old Coast Guard station, and that was an old big place, you know. And the kitchen was off to itself. And my mother would cook on an old big wood stove, you know. And it was hot in the summertime. And the men that went there to work, not only did they pole to get over there, you can see where they went from one island to the other. When they got there, then they had to walk maybe another mile to get to the clam ground.
Right.
And so those men really worked for their what they got. And my father kept account. They'd have to bring to him whatever they did that day. And then on the weekend, the man who was over in Greenback, Virginia, he was in it some way. Anyway, he kept their books. And he would come at the end of the, like Saturday night, he'd come to our house and write all their checks. And I can't remember now what it was, but the checks were very small. I don't expect they got over $5 and $10.
And that was a whole week's paycheck.
Yeah. It was one other house across from where we were. And it was, I believe his name was Roland Jones. He would have been some relation to Roy Jones, who's the oldest man now.
Yes.
Left on the island. That's the only one I remember. Then up on the hill where the lighthouse was. Now my father got an old truck over there. And we could go all over the beach, you know. And we would, that was one of our trips we liked. We could ride up to the lighthouse. And, of course, as children, we knew the lighthouse keeper. And we could go up the lighthouse.
So the years you went might have been the early 1930s when you went over there for the summers. Did you know Bill Scott, the storekeeper?
Sure did.
What do you remember about
him?
him?
He didn't have a store when I got there. The people had started coming to Chincoteague to get their own food because they all had boats. Most of them were getting boats. And his business didn't require it, so he'd give that up. But we would go, my dad would take us up there in the truck at night. That was our outing. We went to see Mr. Bill Scott. And I told you, you've heard and seen the picture of Mr. Ben Scott. He was the cleanest, prettiest white beard you ever saw. Well, Mr. Bill Scott was just the opposite. He had a beard, but he wasn't clean, you know. And he had a little dog named Lady. This is what reminded me of him.
Can you remember anything about Mimey Scott?
She was a little teeny, scrawny woman. That's all I remember. I was little, and I thought she was just about my size. She was tiny, yeah. Talked real fast.
Grown up there, he knew wherever hiding place was and every little nook and cranny about Assateague. So it was a wonderful job for him.
Interesting.
And of course the Scotts still live there. And it was nice for them too, because when my dad would come back, he'd bring whatever they needed. And then Dad had a boat to get supplies back and forth, and a Jeep. And that was a help to the Scotts also. I remember that Mrs. Scott always wanted you to have a nice cold drink of water out of the well. And it was a cup hanging, and everybody drank out of the cup. And my mother had said, you know, everybody drinks out of that cup, but you're going to have to drink out of it too. Nobody's died from it, so you'll be fine. We'd sit on the porch, and they always had something burning in an oil drum or something. And my dad said it was a type of bush that grew over there, and they would put it in this can, and it would send out a smoke that mosquitoes didn't like. And that helped.
Mimey Scott must have had just a wood-burning stove.
Yes, that's the reason you had to have plenty of wood.
Right.
Because it was, I guess it's just too hard to haul coal. And that would have been the only other thing.
That's right. And wood was free.
Wood was free, yep. So they would, as Dad would say, and Lois, my cousin, would say, you had your wood pile and your wood box full by Thanksgiving. And then they'd help get Frank's and Ida's wood box and wood pile. And then on to the church and the school. And she always had some little goodie that we would enjoy in the evening. Maybe my mother would bring a cake or something. that would keep because you had no refrigeration.
Yes, they had nothing. Right?
Nothing. Mm-hmm. And whatever we brought, it would be like Mother would make a pot of soup or a pot of beans, something that would carry over. And maybe some canned meats. I don't know what you could buy back then because things were getting scarce. And then this old big home was still on the hill at where the lighthouse is.
Yes, the keeper's mansion.
We rummage around in that.
Oh.
Mom would let me walk through that with her. And
was nobody was in there?
No. And that piece by piece that disappeared, like the doors, the bathroom fixtures, you know.
Huh.
Life was too hard. You know, they didn't think it was.
Really? Did he describe it as hard, or did he speak of it?
I thought it was hard.
Yeah.
They didn't think it was hard. It was easy living. You grew everything. You had milk, you had chickens, you had all the seafood you wanted.
Right.
And I guess their garden, you know, they grew potatoes, and you think, you know, it's so sandy over there. Yes. But some things like a sandy soil.
That's true. They certainly did grow things there, we know that.
Yeah, because I can remember, like on sheep, when they first started having sheep penning day, that one of the books that I read, I think my Aunt Betty had written that my grandmother had the chickens right there, and she had 3 girls to fry the chicken. So they always had a lot of fried chicken.
Said he grew up over there till he was 9 or 10 years old. Hayes come over here, of course he come with it. The only thing I really know about it is it come over here in the 20s and on a monitor. And it was only 4 rooms, living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms. And his parents had about 7 or 8 acres on Assateague.
The home was moved over, but the property still belonged to the Chericks.
It did.
Yes, and they declined an offer of a certain amount of
From
money
the government
for it. So then what happened one day?
Just the United States Marshal showed up here and served papers. They went to federal court, but they ended up with $2,200. And my Aunt Sue Fish, which was my grandmother's sister, she says she got enough out of that to buy a winter coat.
Smallpox struck this area in 1903. The Board of Health decreed that anyone suffering from smallpox be removed to a pest house on Assateague at once. Chincoteaguers were prohibited from going to Assateague. There is an unmarked cemetery north on Assateague referred to as Smallpoxville.
Her sons, 3 sons, Lee, Grover, and Jim, had to dig her grave and put her in and throw a quick lime on her to eat her up. And when they went back to the house, the neighbors had set it afire and burned it down because the disease was so contagious. And people on Chincoteague at that time took them in and let them live with them.
Almost as soon as you get off the bridge, on your left going over, there's the cemetery. And a lot of the markers were either a cedar and another one that wouldn't rot. And they'd have sometimes be like a cross, you know, something like that. And some of the graves were outlined with, we'd call them seashells. They were really conch shells. It was more to do on Chincoteague. We were poor in one sense of the word, but nobody ever went hungry on Assateague. And I've never gone to bed hungry in my life. And I read in a magazine where in this country there are millions of children go to bed hungry. And if I had a way to feed them all, I'd do